So I know we started on this path, or restarted it for you, I think.
Yes.
Biggest Little Farm was a movie that I kind of got interested in watching, and I told you about it, and I felt like it kind of reignited it.
Oh, completely reignited. It was like a firework going out.
So, and I think with all the stuff that we've been talking about these on industrial, big scale, commercial scale type levels. But I think the best application is to see what you can do with it. Like anyone that's watching this, it's like you can actually take this stuff and apply it to your own life.
Totally. Back in the day when I started out gardening, it was all about companion planting, and I think companion planting grew into what we're doing now, which is so exciting about what they call chaos gardening.
Uh-huh.
And if you remember the book from last episode, Dirt to Soil, the concept of chaos garden was talked about, and I'm like, wow, this sounds totally exciting. And I am an engineer, and I like things in order, and I like symmetry, but a garden is more like nature than it is a construction project. Mm-hmm. So I tried chaos gardening based on the paragraph description in this book, and I'm like, this is completely beautiful, and there are benefits to my plants and to me with this style of gardening, and we just kind of want to show some of those to you.
All right, so let's take a closer look.
Okay. The biodiversity in the garden probably is one of the most important things, and you can see here we have plants not growing in rows but growing in amongst each other. We have this type of lettuce that I've completely forgot what it's called, growing next to my potatoes, growing next to my onions, growing next to this other type of lettuce, and asparagus over there. There's no order, so it seems to us, but the plants completely benefit from this. One is their roots are talking to each other, and that's very important because this plant will help this plant grow. And the microbiology in the soil is talking to both of these plants in the soil and transmitting nutrients back and forth.
The thing that's different from this is you're saying, I mean, roots talking versus like
Communicating, talking.
everything's touching one another in this
Yes.
in this garden versus like, let's say when people do rows and separation and stuff like that, it's basically a plant unto itself.
Yes, they don't have a chance to share nutrients, and the biology in the soil is not sharing nutrients from one plant to the other.
Okay.
Go. All right, here's a great example. This is all cover crop here. I mean, it's clover to you and I, but it's a cover crop, and it does a couple of things. It shields the soil from the sun, and I'm able to keep the moisture in the soil a lot longer. It also shields the soil from the sun and keeps down the weeds. I actually found a weed in my garden last week, and I pulled it out. I don't have to do much weeding, and I know that's such a big thing with people with gardens is having to battle with weeds, but when you keep all this cover crop down here, number one, these are nitrogen fixing plants, and it pushes nitrogen back down to soil, which is good for my lettuce that is bolting. And I don't have to do a lot of maintenance in the garden. I'm just taking the plants and eating them and enjoying them for how beautiful they are. Look at that, tomatoes in the dead of winter. That's a volunteer plant. My daily routine is coming out to my garden and enjoying what I've grown. So I harvest my lunch every day by coming out here and just picking my lettuces in a way that keeps the plant growing. I don't actually have to pull out the entire plant. Oh, and these flowers too.
What are those?
I don't know. It's off of a lettuce.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're edible. Need cilantro. I have cilantro. It's bolting down too. And my snap peas. Oh, that's a good one. My sugar snap peas.
Those are
I
good.
hated these things until I grew them. Until I realized that how good and sweet they actually are when they're grown well.
I like that you can just pull it right off the plant.
Yeah.
Just
And all the I love growing all these brightly colored lettuces and other vegetables because imagine how many antioxidants are in there. It's got to be good for you.
I see that you've not eaten this apple yet.
I did, but the apple actually didn't turn out very good for me. I didn't like it. It was kind of smushy, so I brought it out here for the birds.
Okay.
So the birds are a big help to us. They eat a lot of the things that eat my plants.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to invite in the little creatures that, yes, they do peck at some of my veggies, but they can have a little bit if they're sparing the rest of them from all the pests that would otherwise live in my garden. So another benefit to bringing in rocks into your garden like this and making little structures and hideaways is to give safe harbor to beneficial insects. And they'll live in here and they'll go out and they'll go find all the insects that hurt my garden and eat them. I don't want to eat them, but they'll eat them. And then the birds, as you noticed in the beginning of this little clip, that I had a little wood structure there, and I made some little bird feeders out of pine cones that I found in a parking lot. And there's actually no seed on them right now, but I covered them on peanut butter and put in bird seed, and they were loving it. They've eaten it all. I've got to refresh those. But the birds come in here and they do two things. They eat the slugs, they eat the other insects that I don't like, and they also poop in my garden, which is actually a good thing because it's natural fertilizer, right?
Uh-huh.
And we just had a big rainstorm come through, so I don't see much proof that they've been here, but they do leave behind proof. Oh, here's some right here on my plants that I wash off, that they were here and they were fertilizing my garden.
So you don't actually add any fertilizer to anything here?
I did in the beginning to make sure my soil was healthy for plants to grow, but outside of that, no. Actually,
Okay.
all the plants that I've planted, the cover crops and everything, push down all the organic material that my plants need to grow on.
Okay, so you started with that, and now this is a garden, what, is this 2 years old?
It's 2 years old.
Did you feel like there was more of a struggle in the beginning to get it started, or?
A little bit.
Uh-huh.
It took a little while to get all the organics and the worms and all the other insects growing, and the funguses in the soil actually working to my benefit.
Uh-huh.
But now that they are, I have to do very little, and my garden is proliferate.
It's funny because I look at this and I would think some people would go, well, it's a mess. But at the same thing,
It's beautiful though.
it's what has made your garden strong, and you don't really put a whole lot of work into it any longer.
I don't. I just come out here and get lunch.
I can see some of the seeds right here in this one.
Yep, that one hasn't been finished off. But down here, if you pan down next to my arugula plant, there's some old leaves that are laying down here in the soil. And actually, that is a measurement of how healthy your soil is, how fast the leaves that are laying on the ground like this decompose. The faster they decompose, the healthier soil is, because you have more bacteria and more fungus doing the composting work that you would otherwise do outside of your garden, inside of your garden.
I was gonna say I would have thought that would be a bad thing to see something like that in your garden. Like, you don't want something decomposing and dying in it, but
It's the natural order of things. Nature decomposes on the soil and pushes all those nutrients back into the soil.
and if you got a good balance of flora and bacterial, well, I don't even know what to call it,
Bacteria.
then the composting happens even right on the surface versus having to do that even in a barrel or whatever else that people do.
It's at a much smaller level because it's just the remaining leaves that fall on the ground that are composting for me.
Oh. So this is arugula.
Yes. Chew
You
it
know-
up, and on the back of your tongue, you'll get the nuttiness. It tastes almost like I don't know, a peanut or.
Yeah, it kind of starts to go that flavor towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, it tastes like arugula.
Yes.